Oh, yesterday? That's really good, Short.
Listen to such a
They're on the right track.
They're on the right track.
They're on the right track?
They are, yeah, so don't worry.
All the members are working.
Call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order on the 6th of November, 2017 at 7 p.m. Roll call, Mr. Miller,
Present.
Mr. Janik,
Here.
Mr. Van Truen,
Here.
Mr. Dembinski,
Here.
Mr. Cowger,
Here.
Mr. Winarski.
Here.
And the chair is present. We have a note on file from Mr. Ramsey asking that he be excused. Mr. Cowger.
I'll make a motion to excuse Mr. Ramsey from tonight's meeting.
Mr. Winarski.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to excuse Mr. Ramsey from the meeting tonight. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried, 7-0. Mr. Ramsey is excused. I have 6 items on the agenda tonight. 5 of those, yes, Mr.
I'd like to pose a question that was posed to me. Why doesn't Mr. Ramsey have to have a substitute here? As I was told, I would have to have somebody here tonight because I had a business function I'm supposed to be at. Mr. Winarski, would you like to answer that?
I happily will. And by the way, there was a question posed by me when I saw that Mr. Kukuka, I asked if Gwen would be attending. I based that on Section 44 of the Standing Rules of the Council. My follow-up question that was, in their absence, can we excuse them? That's all.
But,
Simple question, can we excuse you?
but you put my office in a total uproar today, Mr. Winarski. And obviously you just passed this one right by, no problem.
Because,
Why the double standard?
and then I would defer to the law director. I believe it says specifically that you need to be here. You or Gwen. And my intent was not to put your office into an uproar. It was an honest
Mr.
question.
Ramsey has a deputy treasurer, why doesn't she have to be here?
Because it says specifically the auditor or the deputy auditor.
And it says the same thing in the treasurer's.
Okay. So the email that we got said that you would be absent tonight. My question was simply,
And I had an excuse on file, which is Mr. Ramsey does.
right,
And it wasn't saying I was just not coming.
all right.
Okay,
I'll just leave it at that. It was an honest question, Mr. Kukuka.
But I'm posing the same question that you posed earlier.
All right, I just referenced the auditor component of it.
Well,
I didn't see
obviously-
anything about treasurer.
Obviously, there's, some higher level for the treasurer. Thank you.
thank you very much, gentlemen. Mr. Law Director, if you have comments later on, maybe you can share them with the council members. That, but we'll continue with the meeting. We have 5 items on the meeting tonight, for the meeting tonight, that are all on the same subject. And these are ordinances to establish salaries for members of council. The first one I will read, and then perhaps, Mr. Mayor, you may wish to comment on all 5 of them, since you submitted them. But I will read the first one, and you can comment on all of them if you wish. A 17-53, which is an ordinance establishing the salaries for the auditor for the years 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Mr. Mayor.
Right, these items have come up before, and typically what is done, the raises for these positions are based on an average between the OPBA and the ASME contracts, which we negotiate in 3-year terms. There's 2 years left on that both those contracts, and the average is real simple because they both receive the same exact percentage of raises. So for the year 2018, the percentage raise was 2%, and the year 2019, the percentage was 1.5%. So that's just reflected on all those ordinances so that they receive those averages. And if you notice, the last 2 years, for the 4-year terms, the 2020 and 2021, just again says the average of the OPBA and ASME. We don't know what that's going to be yet.
And you have done this for all
the contracts that
all
are
of
coming,
the
or
ones that are
ordinances
for
that are,
4 years.
well, council, I think, is for the 2 years, isn't it?
Yes, and yeah, but the ones, and we have,
Anyone, yeah, for whatever term
yeah,
there
the
is.
4 years, the last 2 years of the 4 years.
Yes.
everybody notices that. The first 2 years, we know what the percentages are, and for those that have 4-year terms, the last 2 are just, it states how they'll be calculated.
But yeah, for the 2 that's for council and council at large and ward, it's only for 2 years. It won't be a 4-year ordinance.
Are there any, do you have any further comments, Mr. Mayor?
Nope.
Any comments or questions for the mayor on any of these 5 ordinances that we're considering for wages and salaries this evening? Mr. Janik.
I have a concern with the auditor one. I mean, I understand Mr. Kakuka, we're not retaining him in that position. And the word raise implies that, you know, we're recognizing also a job well done in relation to the traditional word of raise. And because this position was unopposed in this election, is coming in brand new, took a petition out knowing the salary for this position, I don't see the need to increase it when the person hasn't even started the position yet. So the other ones I'm for of, but I'm going to be against this one in terms of a raise for this salary. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Calder.
Looking through here, I see this as, it's for the position, it's not for the individual. So, you know, I'm not sure what Mr. Janik's talking about as far as trying to put an individual in there. I mean, there's, for city council seats, there could be new city council members sitting up here.
Correct.
And, you know, we're discussing raises there too.
But the fact of the matter is during the election season, they ran a race, so they spent money too running that race. And this person ran unopposed. They took a petition out at which they knew the salary going into the position. I don't think there's a need to increase it. I don't think it's fiscally sound or fiscally responsible to raise a position for a salary when someone hasn't started it yet.
I don't, you know, I don't see where we should be talking about
Individuals, this is not,
what it takes to
yes.
run a campaign and doing your job that you're getting paid for from the city is 2 different things.
Correct.
So,
But you're meeting people and campaigning. And
Okay, I don't,
the argument. can go
are
on, but-
these, perhaps Mr. Law Director, either now or between now and the next meeting, you can, are these supposed to be merit-based?
No,
Salaries?
let me talk on this too.
Yes,
When-
Mr.
When,
President.
when we were having problems, when Mayor Taylor was mayor, we were having problems about raises and percentages and everything else for everybody. Not only council, but the council secretary, the auditor, and everybody along the whole scheme of things. So what we talked about and what we decided to do was base everybody's raises on the percentages that the union contracts would be. In other words, if they got 2%, everyone got 2%. If they got 1.5%, everybody got 1.5%. Now, I know we're passing these for 4 years for the auditor and the treasurer, but in reality, you're passing the same raises on for the new council that's going to come on for those existing 2 years prior or that are added on to these. So actually, the percentages will be the same for everybody. It doesn't make any difference, and we came up with that would be the fairest way to do things and give everybody a raise at the same time. So just base it on the union percentages, and that's the way we came up with it. So some people argued that, you know, council hadn't had a raise in 5 years and we should get more, but we thought this was the fairest way to do it, so that's what we did. And council voted on it, so.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr.
No,
President.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Pecora, did you have any comments? I know that, I addressed the question, and then Mr. Kukuka and then Mr. Miller.
Right, thank you. I would concur with Council President Dietrich about this. I mean, there was I've been here since 2007. I think it was a time period where none of us got raises. And then when we passed the ordinances, that raises would be reflective of what the other employees in the city may or may not be getting. But also, what's notable is that we can't change the person's salary during their term, so we have to establish it now. My statute or Ohio Revised Code prohibits our changing what this person would be earning over the next 4 years. And I'm not quite sure if this is, I mean, I think we've done this.
This isn't unusual. I think this
is
has
how
been
we've
done.
doing it, yeah.
And
I understand Mr. Janik's concerns, and he's entitled to those opinions. And, but this is how we've been doing it since as long as I can remember. So.
We also haven't done it this early either. In the past, we've done it after January.
No, we cannot.
it's
I'd
always
like to
before
correct
the
that.
election,
We
but-
cannot. That has to be established before the office holders take office.
I think what Mr. Janik's saying is we haven't done it this early before January. Sometimes we wait until after the
Yeah.
election. Sometimes we do it before. I've been subject to both, so it depends
Yeah,
on.
And
we've done
sometimes with
both.
regular employees, we do it after January, but this is for elected officials, so it really should be before their term starts.
Yes.
I think it's according to statute. And I would also, mentioning that it should be done before January, I would like the emergency, take as many readings you like, but I would like this to come law before the first of the
So
year.
you would like to have the emergency clause probably added to all 5 of these?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any further comments, Mr. Pecora?
No.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, any further comments?
Just that the emergency would be real important, so it
Okay.
just becomes law
Right,
before the end of the
okay.
year.
Mr. Auditor, and then Mr. Miller. Mr. Auditor?
This position hasn't had a raise in 16 years. Just to let you know. It's been 17,000 for over 16 years. Now, I froze it the last 2 terms at the request of Mayor Taylor. Because the first time, my second term, we were just coming out of the downturn of 08 and 09. This third term, Mayor Taylor asked me again to freeze it because he wanted to, keep the salaries for me and Mr. Ramsey at the same level and go forward from there. So, I understand what you're saying, but this little cost of living would help. It's only $340.
Do you agree with it?
Yeah, I do. Even though my shadow's long, I think it's warranted. When Mr. Pecora spoke about how you can't change in the middle of a term, I did approach him when they changed when all races went into effect 2 years ago, and he looked it up and said, unfortunately, Dave, you can't change in the middle of a term. Once it's established, it's there.
Now, how long did you say you've had, your salary was frozen for?
Diane said it in her first 4 years, her and Kathy, and then when I came in, I've been on for 12 years and 6 months. So.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't realize that.
Mr. Miller?
Our law director answered a question that I had, so
Okay, thank you.
it's moot. Yield back to.
Thank you. Mr. Vancouver?
Just one quick point. In the past, I've been pretty outspoken about enacting raises in administration positions, specifically the mayor, whenever possible, to catch us up to where mayors and other similar communities are at in terms of salary. And I think it's important to do this not for the people who have the job now, but for the people who may be considering running for the positions in the future. And I've said this in the past, it's just a rehash, but I think that we're going to be really irresponsible if we don't get these positions up to a salary point where it will attract the right kind of candidates in the future. I'm not worrying about people who are running for these positions now, but I see where Mr. Janet's coming from. I think he makes a good point, but I think it's really important that we keep up with the cost of living and make these positions more attractive to people who are qualified for them in the future, so I'll be supporting it. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vancouver. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Winarski?
Now, motion to send this to the floor of council with the emergency.
Okay. Mr. Dembinski.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to send A 17-53 to the floor of council with the emergency. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried 7-0. The next item I have is A 17-54. And that is an ordinance establishing the salaries for the treasurer for the years 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Mr. Dembinski.
Move to send A 1754 to Borough Council with emergency.
Mr. Cowger.
Second.
Mr. Mayor.
After listening to the vote on that last one, I really just want to thank Mr. Janik for listening and reconsidering your vote. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried 7-0. And A 17-54 is taken to the floor of council with the emergency. The next item I have is A 17-55, an ordinance establishing the salaries for the members of council for the years 2018 and 2019. I move to take this to the floor of council with the emergency. Mr. Janik.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The nays are Dubinsky and Winarski. Okay. Okay, A 17-55 goes to the floor of council without the emergency clause. Yes.
Well, the motion passes to the floor of council. You just might need those votes. Won't the emergency still be on the
For it to pass, we needed to pass on emergency on the floor of council.
Oh, okay.
You could pass it on the council floor with the
During
emergency.
committee.
With the emergency,
with
okay.
majorities. The actual passing, the actual.
Okay,
Right.
all right, okay. All right, thank you very much. All right. The next item I have is A 17-56. And that is an ordinance establishing the salary for the clerk of council for the years 2018 and 2019. Mr. Cowger.
I'd like to make a motion to take A 1756 to the floor of council with the emergency.
Mr. Dembinski.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to send A 17-56 to the floor of council with the emergency clause. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried 7-0. A 17-56 goes to the floor of council with the emergency. All right, now I would like to skip A 17-57 and just take A 17-59, which is of salaries, another salary and benefit action. A 17-59 is an ordinance to establish the salaries and benefits for the Amherst Fire Department effective January 1, 2018, and repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith. And Mr. Mayor, do you want that with the emergency also?
I would, thank you.
Okay. All right, very good. Comments or questions? Mr. Dembinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one question. It said that we're increasing it so that they also on Sundays get a minimum of 2 hours pay. Was there a reason Sundays was added in if that wasn't part of the previous?
Sunday's a family day. Typically, you're asking these fellows to come and risk their lives and put fires out and keep us safe. And it's something they've asked for a few years. They're a big benefit to the city, working on the on-call basis like they do. They didn't ask for much. We negotiated a little bit, and this is the conclusion we came to. And I think that benefit on a Sunday is important to continue to get enough people to come on calls and make it worth their while.
All right, thank you. I didn't know if it was a goodwill gesture type thing like that, or if it was some other.
It's important. Our force is very good. I think they would still come and serve without this, but this is very beneficial to them, and it's at a very small cost to the city.
No, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. And then just let me comment about the holidays. It just brought them more in line with what the other unions, or what the unions are getting. So I don't, you notice that the holidays changed. It brought them up to one day. And it's just more consistent with what everybody else in the city gets.
Mr. Dembinski.
Move to take A 1759 to the floor of council with emergency.
Mr. Cowger.
I'll start.
There's a motion and a second to take A 17-57 to the floor, or excuse me, A 17-59 to the floor of council with the emergency. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried 7-0, and then goes to the floor of council with the emergency. All right, and the last item I have is A 17-57. Reappropriation of funds in various accounts is needed, reappropriate funds for various accounts in the police department. Mr. Kukuka, you requested this.
Yeah, the police department has had several full-time officers on FMLA and one in the military deployed. So they've seen an increase in the part-time payroll as per the Medicare or Medicaid payout, plus also increased cost for cruiser repairs and maintenance. So we need to make some adjustments, and I am asking for the emergency on that.
Mr. Dembinski.
Move to take A 1757 to the floor of council with emergency.
Mr. Cowger.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to take A 17-57 to the floor of council with the emergency. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Safety Service Director or Mr. Mayor. What's the new equipment and fixtures at $5,000? Last item on there, 100-1001-5244.
I think you're taking it out of new fixtures and
No.
putting it into,
No, it looks like we're putting it into new equipment and fixtures.
Yeah, it's,
And we're putting 5,000 into repairs and maintenance. I was just wondering if there's already been receipts submitted to your department, Mr. Auditor? Is that the case, that that fund is low?
we monitor the balances, and once we notice that, then we work with the department heads to make these adjustments.
So back to Mr. Mayor, Mr. Service Director, what's the 10 grand for? That was,
they're low on that fund, there's a couple months left. I mean, if something goes wrong and we need to replace it, it's too late to ask for it later. I mean, the money's in other accounts, it's more prudent to put it in there in case it's needed. I'll be honest, I don't know what that
so you don't know what,
expenditure is earmarked for at this point.
no ticket items have come in?
I'm unaware also.
But, you know, they talked to the auditor about these changes.
It's nothing new, it's cruiser equipment that they had to replace some parts on
And
in the new fixtures.
it's nothing
On line
extraordinary.
On line item, new equipment and fixtures, that's all cruiser related,
And repairs and maintenance is all cruiser, so this is all cruiser related?
mostly.
Make sure, okay. I'm just looking to see what we're spending an extra 10 grand on that wasn't budgeted. That's all.
Well, I mean.
And it's not extra money,
Yeah, not
it's
extra
money that,
I
at
mean,
the
we're
beginning.
actually taking from Peter and giving it to
Right,
Paul.
right, extra money
And-
budgeting. You're taking money and adding extra money into a budget
No,
line
no,
item.
No.
It's a reappropriation.
It's taking it from one, I mean,
Right.
out of $34 million in January, it's a good guess where we're gonna be spending money.
Okay.
And we're happen to be $5,000 short in something as important as cruiser maintenance.
Basically, we're taking it out of salaries and workers' comp, and we're diverting it to these 4 different funds. So 72,000 is
Mhm.
coming out of these
No,
two.
I understand the concept.
72,000 being reappropriated this way.
I understand the
So that's-
concept.
It's not new money or added money from, you know,
A general fund or
general
something,
fund,
right?
It's just
It's
moving.
still into the department. I get that it's in the police department
Right,
fund.
right.
I was just curious if we had something that was unexpected, or if we had new equipment or fixtures in the actual building, or was it a cruiser? That was my question. It wasn't a very difficult one. I just felt that if we're gonna move 10 grand over from one side, I just thought maybe there was an answer as to why we were moving that.
There's nothing extraordinary that we're
Okay.
planning that for. If something breaks, we need money in that budget in order to fix it. So it's planning ahead in
And
case
you
we
need to
need
take
it.
it out of certain accounts. Per my department, to follow GFAO,
Right.
you have to take it out of certain accounts. You can't just go, okay, we're just gonna take it out of salary and pay it. We have to move it into that and then pay out of there.
Right, as you all know,
And there's nothing to say that they're gonna use all that.
right, and as you all know, when it comes to budget, I hawk it pretty well. And so when I see numbers in the first budget, I ask, and then now when I see a movement into a budget, I ask. That's all, it's
But
just,
it's like the swallows and Capistrano, we do this every August and September and November.
right, and then I was just making sure that this wasn't something that was it unplanned for, or was there a unique
Well, I mean,
situation?
things come up. I mean, like,
Right.
taking money out of your, kids' school fund to pay for dead braces,
Those things come up, new lighting fixtures or new things that, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you for
thank
your
you very
time.
much, gentlemen. Mr. Cowger.
Yes, listening to this and knowing how this works every year whenever you get to this time of year in the city budget, this money, moving it into these accounts doesn't mean that it's being spent. What it is it's the auditor's department, the mayor's office, and the police department being proactive instead of reactive, and noticing that, hey, we may need this at this point, let's go ahead and put it there just in case. It's not actually spending the money, it's just making the reappropriations because we know we will not need it due to the items that were listed as far as the individuals that have been off work, and putting it into the accounts where we do need it or we may need it. So I will support this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cowder. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Councilman. I really appreciate that understanding of how money's moved in an account that all of us have sat up here and dealt with for the last 6 to 8 years. We appreciate the education on that, but that wasn't my question as to why it's moved. Is there a particular issue, or was it just moving money in preparation? Question was answered, and I do appreciate the auditor taking the time. And the mayor, no further comments.
Thank you. I'm going to take a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried 7-0. A 17-57 goes to the floor of council with the emergency. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Winarski.
Madam Chair, is this committee still open?
Yes,
Do you have
it
any
is.
additional business?
It's not on the agenda, but Mr. Pecora, may I add?
That's exactly, I was going to ask him to follow up
Sure.
on that.
Well, you know, looking at the standing rules of council, and I imagine, Mr. Auditor, is because the auditors holds their purse strings to the city, and that not to say Mr. Ramsey's position is not important, however, the presence of the auditor is vital. Council decided at some point when it created its standing rules to require that the auditor or his deputy be present. It has not ordered the, pursuant to the standing rules, unless I'm missing something, that the treasurer or his treasurer's assistant be here if the treasurer can't be here. The Ohio Revised Code under ORC 733 06 indicates that the mayor and officers of the city shall attend legislative authority meetings as directed by council. So council at some point created this local rule, primary understanding rules, which required Mr. Kukuka or his deputy to be here, and not necessarily Mr. Ramsey's staff. And again, I imagine it's because the auditor is so intricate as to our functions, our monies, where we're getting monies from our accounts, and that it's highly important in that respect when it comes to council meetings. So,
What was the date of, do you have a date of that on
83.
that? What year?
our standing
83.
rules.
That particular rule, is that particular rule connected with a date?
I do not, we should probably eventually look at our standing rules and to tweak them a bit to update them. But I'm offhand, I don't have, I'm looking at.
Okay, I just wondered if it was easily found in the notations, but
Yeah,
that's fine.
no, yeah, I don't have it in front of me here.
Okay, all right, I didn't, okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pecora. Mr. Winarski.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. By the way, just a follow-up question with that. And there was a second part to my question with regards to, now, Rule 44 is specific to the Finance Committee. Are we allowed to excuse? And that was the second question. That's what I was hoping to find out. If no one can make it, are we in a position where we can excuse? And I have no problem with excusing the auditor or the deputy auditor. I just had a question.
Council can excuse whomever is required to be in.
And we still permitted to do business.
Correct.
That's all I wanted to know. I didn't think it was too much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Dembinski,
Move to adjourn.
is there a second? Mr. Janik. There's a motion and a second to adjourn.
Hold on.
Okay,
You wanted to know when that specific rule was created. It was created, passed over veto on 9/12/1983. So give me an idea.
all right, thank you. All right, there is a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned at a voice vote of 7-0, and we are adjourned at 7:35 p.m. Thank you, gentlemen.
I'd like to call the Community Development meeting to order. We'll use the roll call from the previous meeting. We'll come to order at 7:36. I have one item on the agenda, A 1758, a resolution appointing the mayor of the city of Amherst to serve on the Amherst Township of the Township and City of Amherst Joint Economic Development District Board of Directors is required by ordinance O 1730. Mr. Jeffries, you submitted this. Do you want to?
I did, just real briefly, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be the first seating of the Board of Directors for the new JED between Amherst and the Township, Amherst Township. So I think you can all agree with me. It's really imperative that we see you over there. It's really imperative that we have the mayor sitting in on that Board of Directors. So I really would appreciate your support in this resolution to put him on that board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Mr. Deminsky,
Move to take A 1758 to the floor of council.
Mr. Janik. Further comments or questions on A 1758? Seeing none, there's a motion to take A 1758 to the floor of council. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion is carried 7-0. Mr. Dembinski.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We stand adjourned at 7:37.
I'd like to call the committee meeting for utilities at 7:38 PM. We'll use the attendance from the previous two meetings, and we have in front of us A-17-60, ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids to supply the city with gasoline and diesel fuel, and authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to award the contract for such products to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Mr. Jeffries, would you like to comment on this?
I submitted this.
Or Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor.
Just asking that we allow the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for this. Actually, we're only bidding the fuel delivery costs, the cost of fuels on something called OPUS. It's something that's some kind of average that everybody pays for the fuel at that time upon delivery. Each year we do this. They deliver to the different tanks that we have throughout the city. So it's real important we have fuel. I'd also like to add the emergency to this because this contract that we have runs out at the end of the year. Also, I've got a little creative. I've noticed that other cities have options to renew this contract for more than for 1 year periods after the initial term, as long as both parties are in agreement. So I've added that to this one. I think it'll save the city the cost of bidding it. The actual fuel delivery cost is very minimal, fractions of a cent between bids. So I think it'd be prudent if we're able to extend the contracts that we bid into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Dembinski?
Move to take A 1760 to the floor of council with emergency.
Mr. Miller?
Second, just a quick question. Does this mean that it'll no longer come through council? After that, each year you'll just be able to renew
Until one or the other party. I think it's for a period of up to 5 years. So 5 or 7 additional periods. I don't have the language of the contract, but I kind of went what other cities do. But as long as both parties would agree to it, I would assume after so many years, the contractor would want to up his price and probably quit agreeing to renew the contract. So eventually it would come back to council whenever both parties did not agree. But again, it's typically fractions of a penny.
Is the option to renew at the same price that you negotiated?
Yes.
originally? Okay.
Yes.
That was my
Oh.
question. Thank you, Frank. So this is just,
It would
with
be the
us doing
same
this,
price.
we don't have to bid it out, save us money on the bidding. It's the same contract.
Yes.
It's just allowing you to renew, extend that same contract that we.
Exactly.
All right, great, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the explanation. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Carlton? We have a motion on the floor to take this to the floor of council. Do I have a second? Mr. Winarski?
I'm sorry, I had a question.
I think we already
You had a
Oh,
second
did
right
you
there.
second with
did. Yeah, I
comment?
second.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Winarski, did you have a comment?
Yes, please, real briefly. The terms and conditions of the delivery, I understand it is just for the delivery and that gas is a separate component of something else. But anyhow, conditions like turnaround time, from the time we call in, how long do we expect them?
That's all part of
their
the
ticket-
contract.
Is it in the contract, is the bid package, or?
It's a bid package that we send out and it has terms like within 48 hours of calling for the fuel, they have to deliver it, and they talk about the 4 different locations that it may be, different rules that they have about delivering it. So it's a several page document that they bid on.
Will that be available
And
before?
the last contractors, the 6 years I've been involved have all been great contractors.
Is that going to be available before we vote on council to review?
I can
I'd just like
pass
to
it
take a
out.
peek at it, that's what I'm asking, if I can take a
Absolutely.
look at it
I
before
can
I
have it in
vote.
your mailbox before the next meeting.
Thank you very much. End of my question.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor of taking this motion to the floor of council with the emergency clause signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, 7-0. Mr. Kaminsky?
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Miller?
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn with a second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:44.
Hey, we got 3 more. Wish I could. Where I got to go. 'cause I-